Hi, I'm Tim Clarke, Managing Director at Harrison Clarke Chartered Surveyors, and today I'll be interviewing Ryan Godfrey, Director of Elements Architectural Studio.
Good morning.
So, Ryan, I want to start with a question that I know a few people have some misunderstandings. So,
Yeah,
what do you think is the biggest misconception about architects and architectural technologists?
blimey. I think probably the largest misconception is that we know everything. And we really don't. We require a lot of specialists involved in the whole process from concept through to completion.
Right. And what sort of input do you normally need?
Yeah, there's a broad understanding that we have of most specialisms, whether it's engineering, whether it's surveying to a certain degree, but
Mhm.
ultimately we need surveyors involved in the early stages. So whether it's listed buildings, it could be dilapidations, it could be to do with ground drainage, but it also lends itself to other specialists like engineers.
Mhm.
It could be other designers like interiors. So there's a number of people that are involved throughout.
And so, how does that impact on the way that you conduct your work if you need the involvement of a structural engineer, for example? Obviously, you're giving the client a set of drawings. Do you ever have to amend those afterwards?
So because of that broad understanding that we have, typically we're collaborating with those individuals. So we'll understand where certain loadings are appearing in the design. We'll be looking at things like cost savings for the client. We'll be looking at I guess, the implications on design overall, and not just aesthetics, but also, I guess, um, the feasibility of achieving that design on site with the contractor. That's the most important thing, really.
Right. And do you have an example of where that's really impacted you? Have you kind of created a beautiful design and then you've had another specialist come in and you've kind of had to go back to the drawing board?
Yeah, I guess we have. You know, we had one recently actually where not so much we went back to the drawing board, but ultimately the engineer had produced a design that was efficient for himself.
Mm.
It didn't think entirely about cost. We were looking at cost savings for the client at the time, but we were also looking at ways to simplify the build as well. So we had, at that particular time, we were actually during construction, so we were trying to simplify it for the chippy, for the contractor on site. We had some electrics to think about as well.
Yeah.
So that particular one was to do with beams. So that was quite tricky to
And so, what
manage.
lessons did you learn from that? Have you changed your approach to structural engineers?
I think over the years we've always tried to introduce people earlier. So
Right.
introducing people as early as possible is really important.
Hmm.
We actually now introduce engineers, for example, actually just before the tender stage, really, just after planning.
Right.
The main reason for that is that we can have an appraisal of the building, and we can actually look at what is feasible, not just for tender stage, but also beyond that as well. So having that early advice is really important.
Right.
People like yourself come in, obviously, as early as possible as well.
We try to.
Yeah.
So I'm aware I've started asking you some questions.
Yeah.
Do you want to introduce yourself to the camera so everyone
Sure.
knows who you are?
So I'm Ryan Godfrey. I am a architectural technologist. I'm director and founder of Elements Architectural Studio. I have experience over about 15 years, and we cover the residential sector in particular, anything from 200,000 on a budget up to about 5-6 million.
Okay, so how would you explain to somebody that knows nothing about what you do,
Yeah.
what an architectural technologist actually does?
So we're very similar to architects. Architectural technologists are specialists in the application of science and technology to architecture.
Right.
But in practice, we do pretty much the same thing. There's different degrees that lead us to get into industry at different stages. So architects will tend to train more in design and creative thought,
Okay.
whereas technologists will be thinking more about construction detailing and the technical aspect. But in practice, we do everything from concept to construction drawings. And that mainly is driven through experience, through professional experience, right? Mainly in employment, really, before you start up your own practice. That's a long way down the line.
Right. Okay. And so when a client's thinking about a project, when should they be approaching, when should they be approaching somebody like you?
So as early as possible, really. We would love to obviously be involved in those early discussions. Quite often we're involved after maybe a surveyor's been involved. Perhaps they've spoken to an interior designer first, or they've spoken to a contractor first. we have our preferred specialist that we like to use, and the reason being is because that makes a project sort of flow as easily as possible and simply as possible, but as early as possible is great. You know, that means that we can direct the conversation in the most appropriate way for them and ultimately save them money.
Right. Okay. And so, are there any kind of key considerations when clients are making an appointment? Are there things that clients get wrong potentially or underestimate during a project?
I think that cost is a huge governing factor. I think also the technical requirements that occur later in the project are really important to try and understand as early as possible. There's so much that we have to educate a client on, even if they've completed a project before, perhaps.
Hmm.
Every project is slightly different. Every requirement for that project is slightly different. So having that technical understanding as early as possible is really key.
Right.
But equally, we don't want to confuse and sort of provide too much information too soon. So
Right.
it's trying to sort of drip feed that information where we can and have systems in place within the business to do that.
And so you mentioned the client budget. Obviously, that's a really key issue during the build. Do you find that clients are realistic about what they can achieve for their money?
I think more so more recently.
Right.
I think because costs have increased over the more recent years, and I think particularly after COVID, I think it was quite a shock to the industry. But I think people are coming round to the fact that construction now is a lot more expensive now than it was 5-6 years ago.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, there are unrealistic expectations. We have a good understanding of cost, but we do advise that clients introduce their project to a QS
Right.
as early as
Yeah,
possible.
get it costed up.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, budget cost analysis is really key.
Okay.
We try to advise them that they don't approach contractors too soon, simply because they'll be going to one preferred contractor, and every contractor has a different approach,
Right.
and that will cost slightly differently.
Okay. So always bring a QS
QS
on
is
board.
key. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. So you're obviously coordinating a lot of different parties in your role.
Mm-hmm.
What's your kind of work balance? Obviously, you're producing these beautiful designs.
Yeah.
How much of your work is actually design, and how much is problem solving or coordination?
I wish it was more.
More design.
Yeah, more design.
Right,
I wish it
okay,
was more
okay.
design. I would say probably 60% of it is management admin related. So,
Right, okay.
for example,
Well,
the last time I designed a property or an extension or something like that was about 2 weeks ago.
okay.
So we're working through one that I'm presenting later this week, but ultimately it's every few weeks we're working on something, but then in between that, 60% of that is admin and management related.
Right, that's really interesting to me because a very small amount of my role is design and a lot of it's problem solving.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
design work go to you, but it sounds like you don't really like the problem solving element.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean the problem solving element, I guess, with us sits very early when we're creating sort of feasibilities and concepts. Once we've solved a design in concept stage, a lot of it is then going through the motion until we then to get to the technical stage.
Right.
And that's when you're again problem solving with regards to regs and all that sort of thing.
Right, regulations being the
Regulations.
building regulations.
Absolutely, yeah, building regulations, yeah, for sure.
So obviously surveyors and architects are very closely related disciplines. What do you find that you rely on surveyors to do that you generally wouldn't do yourself?
So we introduce surveyors mainly for measured building surveys initially. If we're dealing with an older property, it would be a condition survey, a building survey. So that'd be a level 2, level 3 surveys that you guys are completely familiar with.
Yeah.
Party wall is another area that I believe that having an expert involved, although we can handle certain elements of it ourselves, I totally believe that having a specialist is the right route to go. It's always the case of when something goes wrong. That's when you need that specialist.
Yeah.
When that specialist is involved, it gets managed much more smoothly. You find that clients are advised much more correctly and also at the right time in the process.
Yeah, right. And I think you've worked with Faye as well, haven't you?
Yeah,
That
Faye
kind
is
of
absolutely
help
brilliant.
with-
Yeah, party wall expert. I could not do anything without Faye. The reality is,
Me neither.
no, well, probably not. No, but I after all of the party wall surveyors that I've used over the years,
Yeah.
I've probably been working with you guys for the last couple of years, really. But I would advise no one else, simply no one else.
That's very kind of you. Thanks, Ryan. So
Well, it wasn't you, it was Faye. So.
No, it wasn't me. No, absolutely. But my name's above the door.
Yeah,
But I'll
absolutely.
take
Yeah.
it. So If you're looking to give some client advice,
Yeah.
what would you advise a client to do or think about before they embark on a building project that involves you?
Yeah, ultimately think about costs a little bit
Yeah.
at the very beginning.
Hmm.
So many clients that I speak to, what's your budget, and they don't know.
Wow.
And I say, is it £1 million? And they go, no. Okay, so right, so we have a budget somewhere then. So budget is really key.
Yeah.
Trying to understand what realistically you can afford
Okay.
to spend, and that's including professional fees.
Mm.
And also try to not confuse yourself with all the technicalities, or try to believe that you're an expert as such,
Hmm.
but try to become familiar with the design process
Yep.
and who might be involved in your project.
Hmm.
And that's really easy to find out these days.
Yeah.
So, and it's then it doesn't come as a surprise when we start introducing the likes of surveyors and, oh, we need this survey, this survey, this survey.
Hmm.
And that we find can often be a bit of a bugbear for clients, where they trip up on that sort of thing. And then they've got these sort of several surveys that they need, unfortunately,
Hmm.
that are required. And that can really be sort of detrimental to getting the project off the ground.
Mm. So all of these people involved, I know, a lot of people don't like paying for professional advice because
Yeah,
it's just moving bits of paper
yeah.
around. What would you say is the key benefit of instructing not necessarily the cheapest professional, but the best one for client? How does that add value?
I think that ultimately, when you're not racing to the bottom
Mm.
and you're paying higher fees, and when we're not the cheapest,
Mm.
it's you need to ascertain what the value is that you're receiving from that fee.
That's it.
It's not about cost; it's about value, and more often than not, if you're paying for someone that's slightly more expensive and you've vetted them for that value,
Mm.
you'll quite often find that they're giving you more time.
Yeah.
Things aren't rushed. We'll find that the quality of the advice is better,
Hmm.
the quality of drawings are better.
Yeah.
You'll find that the time that is given, people like yourselves, I know
Mm.
you guys dedicate a huge amount of time to advising clients.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's really key.
Mm.
That's really key, because ultimately, when a client fully understands what
Mm.
they're getting involved with, or the process that they're undertaking,
Mm.
or the processes that are required for that project,
Yeah.
that's when things run more smoothly.
That's it. So it's not about the product, it's about the client experience, the client
Absolutely. Yeah,
understanding, and
absolutely.
everyone coming together.
Yeah.
That's really
Client
good.
experience from the time that's given, and client understanding from the time that's given, and ultimately it's the value that's offered from that time.
Yeah, I
And the
agree.
quality comes with that, of course. You have to
Absolutely.
vet ourselves, vet you guys, on the quality that's delivered, and that's very easy to show. We can show good looking drawings. We can
Yeah.
show, testimonials and things like that. That's
Mm.
the easy part.
Yes.
But the client experience, they don't know that until you're appointed to them.
Mm.
And so we try to convey that the best we can.
And I think part of that, from my perspective, is it's very difficult for you to go, right, client, there's all of our stuff.
Yeah.
'Cause part of it is down to the client to do their own due diligence and to,
Yeah.
ask consultants, have you got this case study? Have you got evidence of a track record here?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
it's really important that that clients approach, not necessarily just you and me, but other advisors, to make sure that they are getting the right advice for them, because we're not a good fit for everyone,
Absolutely. Yeah.
are they?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um,
We
so
we quite often find that I think a good consultant,
mm,
whether they're a designer or a surveyor or whatever they may be, will normally advise a client if they're not suited to the role.
yeah.
So, for example, we do some listed buildings,
Hmm.
so minor works we'll deal with, but
Hmm.
anything that's quite in depth, then
Mm.
we'll actually hand off to a couple of architects that we know that are specialists in that.
Right. So you're
And
not refurbishing Buckingham Palace?
no,
No.
no,
Okay.
no, not
Not
at all.
yet.
No, not yet. No, maybe in time,
Yeah.
hopefully. But yeah, I think that's the reality, is that you'll find that good consultants will actually pass on those referrals to the right people.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, it's down to a client doing due diligence and understanding and asking those questions. We had a client ask us recently, do you have experience on listed buildings?
Hmm.
They had a period property, it wasn't listed.
Mm.
And we have worked on period properties, so we managed to show them quite a few examples of what we've done before,
Hmm.
and hopefully we get appointed on a project like that.
Yeah.
But equally, if we're not suited, then yeah, we hand it across.
Yeah, I'm always pleased when when we get listed building properties that we have people in the team that are
Yeah,
experienced.
yeah,
And because
yeah,
I'm not a big fan of period properties.
yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to say my opinions on here in case I get load of abuse for it. But yeah, having grown up working for the University of Cambridge, I've had my fair share, and they are a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
So I'm pleased that I've got people in
Yeah,
the team.
they're quite an in-depth project to manage, and I think that's also the case of, you may not be suited also in terms of size of business. For example, we're a really small practice, so if you're dealing with a really complex project, a listed building project, but actually the fees that are associated with it are quite low because of the work that you're producing is not maybe significant, but it's a really complex job, you quite often find that actually you don't have the resource to run that project. So again, that's another reason that you should be handing that to maybe someone either more experienced or someone that actually can manage that project.
Yeah, I agree. So clients now done their due diligence. Thanks
Yep.
to you, they know where to look. Ryan, where can people find you?
Right, so we are on social media. So we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn. We have obviously our website at www.elementsarchitectural.co.uk. We're refreshing our socials at the moment. We have been nowhere near as good as what you guys are on socials and online. So we're trying to develop that and I guess be a little bit more facing for clients.
Yeah,
we've
be more
always been,
visible.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. We've always been behind sort of the camera, doing other things and sort of taking photos of our work and showcasing it that way. I'm on a panel talk at the moment in London for Design Week, but people don't always see that if you're not documenting it. So yeah, we need to be much better at that.
Well, here's your starting point.
Thank
Feel
you.
free to use
I
this.
really appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much.